Hey, so I'm back doing another review for Fosi Audio. This is the Fosi Audio Box X4 tube moving magnet phono preamp. I did the unboxing of this earlier, so I just kind of want to do a follow-up showing me hooking it up, how I use it. I've got a record here from the band that I'm playing just to kind of have something going on. I'm playing it through a home theater receiver right now. It's got a built-in preamp. There's no preamp on the turntable itself, so that's where this comes in. Basically, if you're not familiar with a preamp, it takes a very low signal, amplifies it so that you can hear it. So typically you would go from a preamp to an amp. In this case, I'm using a home theater receiver just because I've already got it hooked up. It's kind of convenient. I got everything all together. I know I need to do some cable management here. I change stuff quite frequently. So I do have this set up already with an extra ground cable attached to the turntable. This is the cable coming from going to the receiver. This is the one coming from the preamp or from the turntable. So we're going to disconnect these and hook them up here in a second. I'll show you how all that works. I've already got my power plugged in for the preamp. Right now it sounds pretty good. It's a home theater receiver. It's a little bit flat. Doesn't really have a whole lot of depth to it like it should for a turntable, so I am kind of excited to see what this can do. Ideally, you would go from this tube preamp to a tube amp directly to passive speakers. That way you kind of get the full experience from what a tube amp can do. But here I'm a little bit limited on what I've got to test it with, so we're going to go with it the way it is. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to unplug. Now I will say you don't want to plug this directly into the receiver the way that it is, because I'd basically be using two tube amps. My receiver does have a phono input, which it's using right now. I don't know, I guess, yeah, we'll probably hook it up like that just to see what it does. It's probably going to sound terrible, so I'll be switching the input here in a little bit to one that doesn't have the preamp built in. And obviously I need to replace my cable, so we'll see what that does. But this is coming from the turntable, so we're going to put that in the moving magnet input. Now this will work with a moving coil cartridge too, but there is a caveat. There are two types of moving coil cartridges. There is a low output and a high output. This will not work with a low output. You need one specific for moving coil cartridges. It will say MC input. This will work with a high output moving coil cartridge. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in my receiver. I'm just going to make sure that's turned off. Put the bass and treble back to 0. I'm going to go ahead and do the ground, and the last thing I'll do is, of course, the power. So for the ground, you just kind of, I don't know if you can see it from here or not, but you just push that little button down and stick this in the hole, and when you release it, it's just spring-loaded, so it holds it in place. And then the last thing we're going to do is plug in the power. So right now, obviously it's turned off. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. I'm just going to do a little bit because I am plugged into another preamp. So I expect it to sound pretty terrible. Yeah, I think we were... Yeah, it's definitely staticky. This is not the way to go. Let me go ahead and switch that over to the other input. I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got that switched over. I'm just going to turn on real slow. May need to turn the volume up. I had it way down. Yeah, let's go ahead and change that. You know what? That's not what I need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off and unplug it. So what I did is I actually kept the same input plugged in. So I've got these other cables down here. We'll go ahead and plug in. This is going to the other input, auxiliary input on the receiver. Plug that in, and I think we've done it right this time. Hopefully we'll see. So I'm going to turn on real slow. Alright, so yeah, it sounds pretty good. It definitely has a little more depth than it had before. I'm going to mess with the treble and the bass here. And you can do this typically with your amp as well. So I could do this with the home theater receiver. It is a little bit more cumbersome because you're using buttons on a remote and kind of navigating through it. So it's nice to have these little dials here. If I was going to be using it a lot, you know, I'd probably get it dialed in and just kind of keep it there. It's not something I mess with a whole lot, but I do like the way that it sounds. It definitely adds a lot using those, of course. One thing I would like to point out is how smooth these are, though. I mean, it really, it's not too touchy. It just kind of does what you would think it would do when you're messing with it. But it sounds really good. It has a really good range. The highs are coming in real well. The bass is coming in very well. The mid is mid. It's not blowing me away, but honestly, it sounds really good. It sounds light years ahead of what it did before. You know, this, you can pick this up from FosiAudio.com for $79. You can get it on Amazon for $79. So, I mean, it's, you know, it does a really good job, honestly, for what it is. I definitely will be using this a lot in the future. I'm probably going to go ahead and just change the input on my receiver. Now that I've got this, I'll change it to the other so I don't have cables running around everywhere. I'm probably not going to do a great job of cable management, though, because I suspect I'll be changing this out soon just to kind of try something new. But I do want to try out this headphone input in the front. Song is ending, so I'll wait just a second. Alright, so it doesn't disconnect, it looks like, from the other output. I guess you can, you know, turn the volume down on the receiver at that point, or just disconnect it if you're not going to use that, if you're just going to use it as a headphone amp. I will say I'm not thrilled about that. I understand, you know, it's obviously easier to build that way, and again, in its price point, that's pretty normal. I would like to have that turned off, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm going through another amp, it's going to have its own settings for bass and treble. So what I've done here isn't going to sound the same when I put on headphones. It is going to be a little bit different. So if I switch back and forth from headphones to the receiver, I'm probably going to be fiddling with those a lot rather than getting it really dialed into where I like it and keeping it there. So I'm not a big headphone guy, as I've said in my other videos, so it's not a big deal for me. But you know, something to consider if you are switching back and forth a lot. You may want to go ahead and set your receiver to where it sounds good with your headphones also, so you don't have to change this back and forth. But let's go ahead and give this a listen. Okay, so that is way too loud. So it's pretty close. I didn't have to do a lot of changing, which was kind of cool. I honestly expected to do more, so I'm a little surprised by that. And it could just be the way I have my receiver set up too, so you may have a different experience with that. But honestly, it sounds much better with the headphones, as it should. You're going to get a much more clean signal than going through all that other stuff. Again, if I had another tube amp to use with it, some active or passive speakers, definitely would be more like the headphone experience. The headphone experience is much better. I know you guys can't really hear what's happening because, of course, it's, being recorded. It's basically being transferred to digital from analog, but take my word for it. It does sound really good with the headphones. Also, you could use this with some active speakers. So if you have self-powered speakers, you don't need that other amp. You could just go straight to it from here, and that would probably sound great too. I am just testing this with Beats headphones. I don't want to, try to use a $1,000 headset to try to test a $79 preamp. But honestly, it sounds really good with those, so I wouldn't hesitate to say, yeah, you don't need to spend a lot of money to get this thing to sound really good. Put your money into more records instead. But I really got to say I like it. The only real cons that I can see to it, there's a lot of pros, obviously, which we've been over. The only real cons and negative sides that I can see, I would like to have some sort of a switch maybe from headphones to the RCA plugs as far as the bass and treble goes. That would be really kind of nice to get that dialed in for each. But like I said, there's a workaround. Just set your other amp up so that it sounds the same either way. The other thing that I would like to see, they didn't include a ground cable. I get it. More cables added expense. That's one thing I really liked when I opened up the K5 Pro by Fosi Audio, the gaming DAC. It did have everything you needed. You don't necessarily need to ground it in every system. Some systems won't need it, some will. Basically, if you get some feedback, you're going to want to do that. But I haven't really seen any real big negatives. Most of the time, if your turntable has a ground, you probably already got the ground wire. So it probably isn't as big of a deal as I'm making it out to be. So honestly, I would definitely recommend this. I would go out and purchase one of these again any day. So yeah, let me know what you think. You can shoot me a message. You can always follow me on Instagram at dbsilverton. That's dbsilverton. Or you can message me right on YouTube. Feel free, if you have any questions, just let me know. But yeah, I would definitely give it a shout, and give it a try, and I'll see you on the next video.